Hello, today we're going to talk with you about the national federal debt. Last time we talked quickly about the inflation rate here in the United States so far this century. Consumer prices have increased by 76.5% since the start of this century. When we look at federal debt has increased by more than 600% during that same time period, from a little bit under $6 trillion at the start of the century to now $34.4 trillion. The increase has been relatively straightforward in terms of the gradual climb. A little bit of an increase during the subprime mortgage recession towards the end of the first decade. And as with all government expenditures, if they're intended to be short-term, they very rarely get wound back. So from that sort of level, debt continued to grow. And then we saw a large increase in federal debt in response to the COVID shutdowns. And again, although there may have been some short-term intent with those increase in funding, they have not been wound back, and they continue to increase through the end of the current period. When we look at the different administrations, there hasn't really been any difference between Democrats and Republicans, whether they're in the presidential suite or the Congress. Most of the politicians like to spend money, and that money has been continuing at a fairly consistent rate, albeit much higher, of course, than the Consumer Price Index. Under the first term with George W. Bush, the federal debt increased by 32.89%. Under his second term, it sort of increased a little bit to 40.86%, and he was spending a little bit more as we went into that subprime mortgage recession. Under President Obama, the spending increased by 54.56%, so quite a lot that first 4 years of his administration, then leveled off to 21.56% that second 4 years. Under President Trump, 39.18%, and under President Biden, so far it's been 23.44%. So that's how it's changed under the different administrations. So not a huge difference between political parties. This is just a government thing. But when you look at the percentage of federal debt that is actually being financed by the private sector capital markets, let's call that the public, that changed under President Obama's first term. Under the two George Bush terms, the share of federal debt being provided by private capital markets was in that less than 60% range. President Obama changed that, and that was a significant policy change, and that has continued under his second term under Donald Trump and now under Joe Biden. And we'll talk more about the significance of what has happened to federal debt, moving from a much stronger reliance on the public sector, the private capital markets, and how that has implications for the future. Until next time,